My father used to say, nobility is 0. But if you put a 0 after a 1, it becomes 10. The pleasure of a conversation. We like conversing and exchanging point of view and trying to convince the person in front of you. And this pleasure of conversation, that was the case dans les salons littéraires, 17th, 18th century, 19th century. And still now, it's a hotel. Yes, it's a 5-star hotel, but it's not a family home. It's a Hôtel Particulier.
We are the most visited country in the world.
Welcome to A la Française, the podcast that shines a light on the French art of living and those who shape it. So today we're joined by Richard de Warren, a former diplomat in New York City. You later pursued your career with LVMH. We will get back to that. At the heart of the French luxury. Through your family heritage, the Sommier, Richard, you embodies a unique perspective on the French history. So everyone get ready for an exclusive conversation on the secret of the French aristocracy. Thank you, Richard, for being here. One of your ancestors fought for American independence, right?
That's right.
And you are members of the Society of Cincinnati, the nation's oldest patriotic organization founded in 1783. Can you tell us the history of this ancestor?
When the United States became independent, George Washington, who was the first president of the United States, although he disliked the fact that there would be a nobility in the U.S. because there was a nobility in Great Britain, which was the country which had colonized, the colonies, the former colonies of the United States, said, anyway, I would like to create a body, a society, which will gather the officers who fought for the independence of the United States. And there were, at that time, 13 colonies of Great Britain who formed the United States of America. And there were so 13 chapters. But he said there should be a 14th chapter that would be France, because the US wouldn't be independent without France. And I have an ancestor who was commanding a navy at the famous Yorktown battle, a navy battle at the Chesapeake Bay, and he was part of the escadre of the Amiral d'Estaing, and so he became a French officer of the Society of the Cincinnati, and I'm a descendant of this ancestor, and so I'm part of this society. It's a bit unknown, but it's really important for the US and for the one who are interested in the history and the origin of the history. And today, within our relationship, I think it's important to remember that France really was key for the independence of the United States.
And truly, what does it tell about the relationship between France and USA? How this historical events shape the relationship between France and USA?
Well, France is described as the oldest ally of the United States. But it's true that over time there has been many other aspects in the international relationships of the United States. So it doesn't prevent sometimes some disagreements between the two countries. But at the end of the day, that's why the US helped for the World War I, World War II, with many other aspects. But it's in the background, and it's important to keep it in mind.
So, can you explain truly or concretely the mission of this society? What do you do today? What does it consist in?
Well, it has two key purposes. One is to make it still in the mind, so it's aspect of history. Historians are going back in the what happened for the independence, with both sides, the U.S. and France, bringing some elements of history, but also bringing it to younger people. And the second aspect is to have some young leaders in both sides. For example, myself, when I was 20, I was invited as a scholar to rove within the United States, being welcomed in different American families, and it helped me a lot in the rest of my career, having this experience on the ground with the different American families. And in the same way, you have each year American scholars who are invited in the French families. So it's a little grain in developing and keeping the strong relationships.
So you were yourself a diplomat?
That's true.
What was your job? What were you doing?
I was a diplomat during 7 years. After business school, I went to a French school called Sciences Po in Paris, then in a French school called ENA, École Nationale d'Administration. And from there, I decided to become a diplomat. I was first posted in Paris, then at the French embassy in Washington, D.C., and then in New York as a French permanent mission to the United Nations. So the job of a diplomat abroad, Washington in my case, then in New York, is to develop the French vision it has on some aspects of international relationships, but also to be able to describe the position of the United States and to entertain so that we go really in the more interesting and the more understandable point of view of each country, and trying to make some bridges.
With your duty in Washington, D.C., then New York City, how would you describe the relationship between the United States and France at the time where you were in duty? And how would you describe how it evolved since then compared to when you were a diplomat there?
Well, I'm no more a diplomat, so I want to be careful about today's
diplomatic.
I'm using diplomatic words. Yes. Well, when I was posted in D.C., Reagan was president of the United States. Then Bush became president, and so
in the 80s, right?
In the 80s, exactly. I arrived in 87. And so it was a very good relationship. Mitterrand was president of the United States, but
of France.
Of France, president of France, excuse me. Yes, the relations were good, and so it was easy for me to go almost every day at the State Department to get some information, share information. I could invite some diplomats at home for dinner, and it was a way also to develop personal relationship, but also to create trust and confidence. So it was a good way to get our information and to exchange information. It was not as if there were some frozen aspects in the relationship. Of course, there could be some differences when we go to Central America. There was a Sandinista, and France was a bit left with Mitterrand, and so they could support a bit some of this revolutionary. It was not so revolutionary, in fact, but that was in the margin. The central aspect of the relationship, defense, NATO, we were aligned.
And do you think it changed since then?
Well, I think it has changed, yes, for sure.
In what way?
It has changed in the sense of, globally speaking, the U.S. feel that Asia is now so important. So there is a balance between Europe and Asia, with China and the rest of Asia, the power it has in the world gross national product, and about the strategic aspects of Asia and China and North Korea. The Middle East has been always very important. That has not changed. When I was already in D.C., Israel, Middle East, the threat of Iran, already we were speaking of the threat of Iranian missiles in the 80s. So that was already existing. But beside this global aspect where the balance of the world is more towards Asia than towards Europe, there is also the president, this administration, and it's a new way of behaving. And that is probably what is more surprising. We couldn't expect that there would be so brutal way of having the relationship, putting one's opinion, It's no more very diplomatic. It's really as you would be in a business, very strong business, and showing your strengths.
So you lived in New York City in the late 80s, you said. And two of your children live there now, do they?
That's right, yes.
So what is your souvenirs? What did you like? What are the features you liked in New York where you were there? And how would you say that it has changed? How would you define the new New York now compared to the one you lived maybe 30 years ago?
So when I was in New York at the French mission to the United Nations, that was very interesting because we had a lot of negotiations with many other countries. Also, you are part of the Western world. And I was living in 57th Street at the quarter of 3rd Avenue. And with my wife, we felt that the taxis were crossing our sitting room, It was already very noisy and a lot of energy. This energy has not changed. I'm visiting two of my 5 children live in New York, and it's each time the same sense of energy in this, and I love it. And so yes, this special energy. But New York is part of the U.S., but it's a bit beyond the U.S. Yes. What has changed is the cost of living, extremely high. My eldest son, who is born in D.C., the second son is also born in D.C., but the eldest one works and has married an American girl. And his children, he has a boy with 5 and a daughter with 3, they go at school, private school. It's for, just starting, we say in French, jardin d'enfants, it's
kindergarten, yeah.
Kindergarten, $40,000 a year just for making some drawings and knowing how you would put your anorak on your back, So the cost is very expensive. You need to have good jobs to live in New York. Otherwise, you live outside of New York, and so you lose a lot of time in the transportation. And the city is anyway exciting, beautiful museums. So yes. It has less change that you would say, New York is still New York.
And what differences would you point out with Paris, where you actually live now? What are the main differences between New York City and Paris?
Paris is anyway with a stamp of tradition. And people like it because it has its beauty of tradition. New York, it's cosmopolitan, and you could put down a building which is maybe just 20 years ago old, and you rebuild it. So there's a lot of change, and it's made of this renewal. While in Paris, you have some renewal, but anyway, you have a part which is still there, and we wanted to keep it like that. So the evolution is much more low in Paris compared with New York.
Let's speak about your family, the Sommiers. So your family history is also linked to the story of the Sommiers, a family initially of bakers, right, who raised to the highest position in France. Can you tell us a little bit of the saga?
Yes. Well, I have a lot of admiration for these ancestors. As you put it, they were bakers in Burgundy. And when Napoleon I was governing France, there was wars between most European countries, notably Great Britain, and within these wars, Great Britain implemented a naval blockade of the French coast, and that prevented the merchant ships to bring the sugar canes to France, sugar canes from the Antilles. No more sugar. And Napoleon said, well, we'll make sugar out of beetroots. And so in the north of France started to be grown sugar beets. But you needed to transform the sugar beet to get the sugar. And the sugar refinery used to be in the harbors where you would unload the ship bringing the sugar canes from the Antilles. It was far away. And so a few entrepreneurs said, we will create new sugar refineries closer where you produce the beets. And the Sommier, among a few other families, the Béguin, the Say, then they merged to become Béguin Say sugar refinery. But the Sommier, they were in bakery, but probably also in pastry. So they knew a bit of the ecosystem of the sugar. And there were several boys in the family. 3 of them said, oh, we'll leave the bakery business in Burgundy and we'll go with sugar. And it happened. There has been an incredible growth of sugar consumption in the 19th century, then in the 20th century, and they became wealthy, and they built a little empire with sugar.
So the Sommier is also linked to the story of the acquisition of Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte, which is maybe the most beautiful private chateau castle in France. Do you have any souvenirs there? Any anecdotes? Can you tell us more about this chateau?
Well, the Sommiers, as they became wealthy, first they decided to build their big house, a big mansion house in the center of Paris. And this big mansion house today I've converted into a 5-star hotel, Hôtel Alfred Sommier. Maybe I can develop this aspect. And Alfred Sommier, a few years later on, he was in a position with the money of the sugar to acquire this beautiful Vaux-le-Vicomte castle. And it was built by the Minister of Finance of Louis XIV. There's a lot of history around this beautiful castle. It became the model for Versailles Palace, Versailles Chateau. So it's so linked with French history, French architecture. And my cousins who take care of the chateau, are really creating a marvelous jewel, still living a jewel.
So today you mentioned that you're managing and overseeing a landmark, which is your family landmark in the heart of Paris, called the Hôtel Alfred Sommier, which is a 5-star hotel in the heart of Paris, listed as a monument historique, like historical monument. Can you explain to an American audience what is a monument historique?
Well, in France, you would like to protect some old buildings because it's part of French history. We like this legacy. And so there are commissions with the French Ministry of Culture, and they can list, these buildings, these estates, and they say, well, it's protected. You cannot put it down. You have to keep it. And if you make some changes, it has to be done with authorization of a special part of the French government and so on. So it's part of French history. And this place, this mansion house, I will come back on the name of this mansion house, has been recognized as a interesting part of French history. And so there is this recognition, and for me, I would anyway protect the place because it's a part of my family history. But anyway, there is this stamp of monument historique, and you have a special sign when you visit some chateau, some museum with this monument historique. It means something in French architecture and French visits, tours. So it has a real meaning. Coming back to the place, this mansion house, right in the center of Paris, close to La Madeleine, there is a word to describe this type of mansion house. We say in French, hôtel particulier. People are often misguided with the word hôtel particulier. They think that it's a special type of hotel. Nothing to do, because hôtel was a word you still find in French language with describing where the townhouse, you say Hôtel de Ville. Obviously, it's not a hotel. When you pay your taxes in France, you go at Hôtel des Impôts. The big police stations, they are called Hôtel de Police. They are not hotel, but you use the word hotel. Why? Because in the medieval times, hotel had not the meaning of a place where you sleep. Hotel was meaning big house. Big house. So you can have big public houses, but you could have also big private houses. When you're a member of the royal family, the big house could be called un palais, palace. You say Palais du Louvre, Palais Royal, Palais de Versailles. You say Palais de l'Élysée, where the French President de la République sits. But the French Prime Minister is not in a palais, is Hôtel Matignon. Hôtel, you could have also big private houses, Hôtel privé. We say in French, Hôtel particulier, not in the sense of particular, in the sense of private. And the billionaire Bernard Arnault, he lives in a hôtel particulier, where you have a big arch, where you are protected, a courtyard, a garden in the back, and so it's a seclusive old building where you have all the history, the decoration, and these hôtels particulier, some are from the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century. It's very special to Paris. Or some cities. In Italy, you would say palazzo. In Vienna, anyway, you would say palais, So in French, we say hôtel particulier. And the way I describe my hotel, because I've converted my place in a hotel 7 years ago with 80 rooms, 5-star hotel. So I say, it's a hotel. Yes, it's a 5-star hotel, but it's not a hotel. For me, it's a family home. It's a hotel, it's not a hotel. It's a hôtel particulier.
Is it a place where you were raised?
I was not raised because after World War II, the family was mostly in Belgium. My mother was Belgian, so I was not raised there, but it was part of the family. And it had been converted into offices and maybe keeping some apartment, but mostly converted to offices. And 7 years ago, I've reconverted into a hotel. Going further, when I describe these old houses, big houses we call hotel, at that time there were no tourism. People if they would go, very few people would go abroad moving, but in this case they would go in inns, albergo in Italian, auberge en français. I have a son, also born in D.C., who married an Italian girl. And his parents-in-law, when they see me, they say me, "Oh, Riccardo," Richard, "Riccardo, come sta el albergo Alfred Sommier?" So in their language, they still say albergo, So hotel, today for everybody, it's a place where you pay for sleeping. In the old times in French, it was different. Then the language has changed the words, and the word in French, hotel, has spread all over the world. But if you go at the etymology, it was a bit different. And I play on these words saying, it's a hotel, but it's not a hotel. It's a hôtel particulier. And I would like my guest to have the experience of an old French Parisian family home, and where I describe the history of the Sommier family.
So when you promote the hotel, you sell an experience, right, more than a hotel room. What kind of experience do you sell? What makes the experience at your hotel so unique?
It's a single luxury hotel in Paris belonging to the same family. Today you have beautiful hotels belonging to chains or with the money of the Middle East and so on. Here it has never been out of the family. I'm a descendant. And I'm, as it used to be, recreating the life where when the family was really living there, and the decorations, the portraits, so they can really feel as being a Parisian home, but a quality of Parisian home with the architecture, the decorations, the sitting room. And so it's not a museum, of course, but it's a combination where they find it exquisite. And in addition, maybe to a certain point, well, they can have an exchange with me, and we can talk of any topic.
So you spend a lot of time in the hotel, sharing with the guests?
Yes. Not all of my time, but I cross guests. I'm very happy to exchange with them, and I give them some part of history of the place, history of the family. But in fact, then they speak, and they give me a lot of information, and it's a two-way street, and we love that. And then we can have a drink, and then they can meet other people, and it's kind of where you make some encounters, and people say, well, I have a very good memory of the place. I'll come back. And my rate of return, repeat guest, very important in the business, repeat, well, it's much higher than the average.
And so you carried a huge renovation, I guess, 7 years ago when you turned this hotel into accommodation. What was it? How complicated was it being a monument historique? Did you have a lot of restrictions, a lot of controls, a lot of administration paperwork?
Yes, I had to go through permis de construire, the permit to convert the place with a lot of regulation, a lot of them for security with the firemen, but also for the architecture. And commission visited me, and I exchanged with them. But they saw that, we say in French, plus royaliste que le roi. I was even more eager to protect, to recreate the beauty, because it had been converted into offices. And I rediscovered beautiful part of the place. So they felt with me, yes, we have the regulation, but this guy, he is really a fighter to rediscover and protect the beauty of the place.
Can you tell us about the history of the place? Who is Alfred, actually, in the family? Did he create that hotel? Did he build it?
Alfred, when he was 18, his father saw that he was extremely intelligent. He was supposed to go in an engineer school, Central. And his father said, well, go at the age of it immediately in the sugar business of the family. You can skip the studies, this type of a grande école, top university. You skip it. And he did it marvelously. Who would do the same today? But it shows that when you are smart, you can really be ahead. You are on the ball, and it works very well. And he did marvelously, and the family business, sugar business, grew very well with Alfred. He was very easygoing. He had a very good relationship, and so people would really like him. And this skills of a relationship, which is a bit of a French part of art and elegance, being able to entertain people, being elegant, good conversation, it's part of the French elegance. He had it, and I'm sure it helped it for his business relations, but also as the owner and the one who re-put in beauty the castle of Vaux-le-Vicomte, where you could have a head of state visiting and prominent people. And so he had this sense. And I have a lot of admiration about these people as him who were entrepreneurs, who were coming from the bourgeoisie. In the old time, you would say you had, nobility, bourgeoisie, and tiers état, people who were more workers and farmers. And sometimes we come back with traditions in the nobility, the way you behave, and I had in my education some explanation about the family of my mother, because all that comes from my mother, very old Belgian family, very aristocratic. But when I go further, I thought, but no, in fact, this tradition, it comes from the Sommier. And they were clever enough to understand the tradition of nobility, but also to make it move and recreate them. And so they in fact, did as if the noble would say, well, it's my tradition, but in fact, no, it had been brought through the intelligence and the entrepreneur spirit of this type of family as the Sommier.
So this is interesting, Richard, because your name is de Warenne.
Yes, that's my father's name.
Your father's name, yes, which is your name also, and
yes.
I guess the name of your children. De Warenne in 2 words, with what we say a particle, de Warenne. Can you explain what to the American audience and people who don't know the meaning of this construction of de Warenne and this particle? Can you explain what it means, what it refers to, and how, which is another question, how has the French aristocracy played an important role on defining the French art of living?
I'm smiling because it's a tricky question, but it's also really part of the French history and the French social behaviors and heritage. My father used to say, nobility is 0. But if you put a 0 after a 1, it becomes 10. Or after a 2, it becomes 20. So somebody who is just noble, nothing to do. But in fact, if you add it to other skills, it can make a change. So that's a way to put it. Yes, it has still in French general understanding of the social relationship, it has still an impact because it's really part of a tradition, first. And second, the nobles were able to revive themselves by marrying people with some money and some were anyway with good education. So they are still there, but not as they used to be at the time of the Ancien Régime with the monarchy. So still there, but it's anyway going a bit further down. But what I said further, it's a 0, but if you have a 1 before, it becomes a 10. I still believe in it. DE, the particle, is a first sign of nobility, but you can have noble without this DE, and you can have people with DE, as General de Gaulle, but he was not a noble. So it's a way. In fact, it's a bit special to say, but we can recognize who are, who are not, and we can say, well, it means something, it doesn't mean something. So it's really subtle.
Interesting. Can you go further? How can you recognize somebody who is who you could consider a noble?
Yes.
Can you just explain what are the different ranks of the nobility between the baron and baroness, etc.?
Well, first I would like to say that, in fact, it's not the title which is so important. It's the oldness of the family. Is it a noble family from such many old times? That's the real important thing. You have some families who have become prince of duke with Napoleon I or Napoleon III. That's recent in French history. So yes, the kind of a hierarchy with a prince, you can make a difference with prince of royal blood, prince we are not of royal blood, duke, marquess, count, baron, some chevalier, but we don't have really chevalier in French nobility. So there is kind of a hierarchy, but that's not so important. It's more, in fact, the history of the family and the social position, which is behind that. People understand which are the real social positions, where you have some links with other families, you had some illustrations with some positions where you have also wealth. It's all a mixture of all that.
And do you think that this French nobleness and the French aristocracy still play a role in the aura of France?
I think it doesn't play a big role. It's not. We are not in a royal country as England or Belgium or Netherlands or Spain. No, so not so important, And in my case, with my hotel, where I have 90% of my guests who are foreigners, I think that people can feel about the history. Maybe they can have a feeling about nobility, but I don't want to play so much on that because it's more elegant to be discreet on that than on playing on that.
What are the cliché that about the French that are the most obvious for the Americans and that actually are false, are fake?
I think it's a very good point because the guests I see in my hotel, they tell me that you have ideas, cliché in the US. Well, Parisian people won't be nice with foreigners. They don't speak English. Paris is so dirty, and in the cabs they wouldn't be nice. And they tell me, but no, that's not true. But not at all. It's so beautiful. The people are nice, and they speak a very good English. And yes, so yes, they are cliché. I think that it's a bit of what we do in France with the Belgian. I'm half French, half Belgian, and we have les histoires belges, where we can laugh at Belgium. Although they're very nice people, you get along so well. They're very nice people, but we have histoire belge, where we can have some fun about taking the French accent speaking by Belgian people. It's a bit of that French bashing, but people can go beyond that, fortunately.
Same with the English, actually. We're very close to the English, and they're our best friends, and we make a lot of fun of them.
Yes.
About the French character, well, this is a very wide question, but would you be able to describe one quality of the French and the other way, one flow?
I tend to say that you have really different levels in France. French society is anyway split in different levels. For example, I feel that beauty in Italy is really spread all over the Italian people. You go in a little village, you see that the village is nice, well done, the houses are beautiful, the girls are well dressed. In France, all that is very generally speaking, but in the history, we tend to have elite trying to encapsulate the beauty with their castles, with the collection of art. It was more in the elite of the society. Today, it's moving, but it has been a tendency in France that beauty, for example, it's more than elite that overspread, But coming back to your question, the skills of the French people, I think that they have a kind of a rebel spirit. So it's hard to govern French people because they would be happy for that, a kind of rebel. But rebel people sometimes, when they are unionized, when they go together, I'm not speaking of unions, and well, they can be very strong.
Is there in your routine, in your everyday life, or often something that you consider very French that is part of your pleasures?
I think that the pleasure of a conversation. We like, and I like, conversing and exchanging point of view and trying to convince the person in front of you. And this pleasure of conversation, that was the case dans les salons littéraires, 17th, 18th century, 19th century, and still now. And we have our political debates. And I think that foreigners look at us and this pleasure of conversation. And it's a way of having a witty spirit.
Is there a place in Paris that you particularly like and that you would advise your guests to visit, which is outside the crowd and outside the big sites?
Yes, I would recommend Le Jardin des Tuileries. When I was a kid, I was playing soccer with my boyfriends, and I was having my little boat sailing on one of the ponds, or the 2 ponds of the Jardin des Tuileries. It's a very nice park between Place de la Concorde and Le Louvre, Museum du Louvre, and it has a terrace overlooking the Seine River, and you have this beautiful range of the bridges, and from this beautiful garden with the flowers, the sculpture, different types of history in the sculpture. In the perspective, you have les Champs-Élysées with the Arc de Triomphe, and on the other side, Le Louvre with the Arc de Triomphe du Carrousel, la Pyramide du Louvre. It's a beautiful garden. Yes, I would say just stroll there and you breathe the air of Paris, and you can oversee the Seine River, and you understand the beauty of Paris, the magic of Paris.
We're speaking a lot of Paris, but France is not only about Paris. Far from that. Is there places in France outside of Paris that you would recommend people to go, and where you like to spend time, where you would dream to spend time, where you have souvenirs?
Well, I love Brittany. I've part of my family who is stemming from Brittany. I have a house in Brittany. Brittany is very wild, and also a lot of tradition. The sea, so exciting to be both on the seaside and on the land, and Brittany offers the combination of sea and land. And in some places you feel, well, I'm in 2026, or I am, maybe 3 millennium before Jesus Christ, as it does not change with the rocks, the waves. You don't know what time are we now, so wild and preserved. But I love also Provence because of the beauty of the villages, some very nice chateaux, and beautiful Mediterranean landscapes, but beautiful cities as Bordeaux, part of Burgundy. It's I'm piling, some postcards of. The list would be very long. Yes.
Yeah, which it's actually a very silly and tricky question because France is so diverse and offers so many experiences and landscape that you cannot really prefer one place from another. But still, Brittany, Provence for its village and its tradition, and maybe Bordeaux for the wine.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Richard, you're really one of the ambassador of the French way of living in the French tradition. Is there somebody that you would see sitting on your place and speaking of his experience and speaking of France as well as you're doing?
Well, you said that I'm an ambassador. I'm flattered. I left the French diplomacy not being an ambassador. My father was an ambassador. Grandfather was an ambassador. So maybe you give me the title of ambassador. So I'm very happy. I think that many French people can speak about France, and no, there's no exclusivity, and there are other hôteliers, people who have their pastry, and people who are in fashion. So yes, France belongs to all the French people.
Thank you, Richard, for this very nice conversation and for diving into the French traditions. Thanks.